everyone, welcome back. I'm Pragya Mishra and I'm the AVP of Customer Success and Operations at Courseplay. Courseplay is a 360-degree employee growth platform. Now today's topic is an interesting one. To discuss this, we have Surbhi Diwan. Surbhi is a seasoned HR leader with 20 years of experience scaling businesses and driving employee success across diverse industries. She is currently associated with Ashiana Housing Limited as the Vice President of HR. Hi Surbhi, welcome to today's talk. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi Pragya, thank you so much and appreciate the opportunity given by Courseplay. Look forward to the interaction.
Thank you. So today's topic, which is mentorship and coaching, unlocking human potential through personalized learning and development. Now, I am actually very excited to start this topic with you because of the experience that you have and various industry exposure. So one of the things that has struck me when we discussed this topic internally was the value of mentorship and coaching in L&D. So in your opinion, what is the impact of mentorship and coaching on employee engagement, retention, and performance?
All right. I think I'll just draw an analogy for everybody first, which will make it a lot more relatable. Go back to your school days. Remember how challenging it could be to keep pace with the curriculum of the class. Somebody wants to have more time to grasp a particular topic. Somebody's picked it up. Somebody has two more questions. Or maybe somebody just wants to have fun along and will ask a question just to keep the interest of the whole class and the bonhomie going, right? But everybody needs to be taught and trained on that particular subject collectively, and a class needs to graduate and move forward on that topic, right? So what exactly happened in that classroom is going to be what generally happens in mass trainings. However, when I look at individualized, customized conversations and trainings, that's what exactly is the essence of coaching and mentoring. I will be able to get a lot more focused time from my tutor, which is typically a private tuition. That's exactly what the role of a coach and a mentor translates into. Giving more individualized training, helping the individual learn at their pace, ask as many questions as required till the topic is clarified, as well as do not have any, inhibitions in asking questions. Because a lot of times in mass classes or in general trainings, which are open training forums, I'm not saying any one of these formats is bad, but coaching and mentoring basically helps to get that individualized content out to the individual and helps the individual grow with a better one-on-one focus. So that's one thing which I would like to call out as an analogy to get the difference set out. One or two of the organizations where even I have learned from typically is Google. They had a project called Project Oxygen. It's a perfect example where they set out a personalized coaching in which each team member got individual assistance to grow and learn and hone particular skills in the organization and help them scale up. It also led to a lot of individualized training leading to a higher level of engagement. People felt that these individuals were a lot more invested in and as a result wanted to stick around and learn and grow with this particular organization as the company also grew. Similarly to the same concept, what we've taken on at Ashiana is a coaching program in which we have connected employees and mentors who could offer tailored advice and support for the individuals at different junctures in the organization, at different particular grades in the organization, in different departments and cities in the organization. So what happens is it's a personal touch point. I will be able to enhance a particular individual's skills to that effect where they need to be assisted and facilitated in their journey. The individual in return feels a lot more empowered. The engagement level is customized and hence more high. And as a result, it will also help the individual to learn at their pace with this particular coach's assistance. So the coachee and the coach have a relationship which they develop over a period of time, which helps in driving retention in the organization also. And LinkedIn also does a similar program. We've got Tata also running a program. ICICI, Aditya Birla, most of large organizations where we want to look at sustenance, these are programs and especially the thought process of coaching and mentoring. Wherever we see a lot of this happening at the org level, definitely results in long-term engagement and retention. So it's not just that you're investing in an individual's growth, but you're also investing in the overall growth of a team and the organization at large.
Understood. So I actually really like the point you mentioned about sustenance. And you gave brilliant examples of be it Google, be it Ashiana, your current organization, and LinkedIn. And you also mentioned that in Google and Ashiana, this is not limited to cities or maybe levels. So do you have like a benchmark or a way of segregating these mentorship programs for employees, like, you know, a particular department? How do you select these employees?
So it's because it's individualized and it runs across levels in the organizations. First, it starts with the identification of the need. So if I'm a young manager who's been recently promoted, I will have a different need, while as a tenured manager may have a different set of requirements in terms of managing maybe tough conversations, the ability to say no for particular matters in the organization, to stand up and voice their opinion and stand by the decisions that they want to, or for that matter, they may even need something as basic as skill of storytelling, how to build the context for a program that they want to introduce in the organization. It's not a A-line approach where everybody gets a straight-jacketed training on 1, 2, 3, 4. So I could be at a different level in the organization. My need is different, and my coachee also understands what are my hindrances, because I'm able to speak in an environment which is confidential and tell and get the confidence that yes, I will be able to be vulnerable and tell my coach that these are the areas that I'd like to develop, and this is essential for my next level of growth in the organization. Or for that matter, I may be learning certain skills and be using them in another organization, for all I know. But an organization to have that mindset that I want to teach, train, coach an individual to scale up is going to be the basis of making a successful system. As an organization, Ashiana also invests. I will call us as a learning organization. We do not have the mindset that what if I train somebody today and they leave me tomorrow. So one belief is very clearly, even if I train, they leave, they will come back as boomerang cases, and even if they don't come back as boomerang cases, they will know that they miss the training and coaching that they used to get, the mentorship that they used to get at the organization.
Yeah.
And I've in my last 7 years at Ashiana, I have been witnessing people come back and give us feedback, even in our exits, to say the kind of training programs, the way you train, teach, coach individuals, we've not experienced that. So I'm very happy and proud to share that it's an experience that we've been able to deliver over the years. Even prior to me, this is the building block of the organization. We are definitely a learning organization.
Wow, I love that word, learning organization. And you've addressed a very important point here, because it is always easy to say that yes, we have a lot of training programs, but it is always a concern for the L&D and the HR teams on what happens if we invest so much, but in the end an employee leaves the organization. And having this mindset and being so confident with your entire training program that you know that these employees are going to miss it at some point, this actually brings me to my next point that I was going to discuss with you, is the culture. So you spoke about how important it is on creating this mindset, but then what about fostering this entire culture that values and supports mentorship from the lowest level of the organization to the highest management, the C-suite? What do you feel is the importance of coaching and mentorship at all the levels?
Well, it's important at the foremost. So I'd like to give another analogy here. Sorry, I'm just going to keep it relevant by virtue of these analogies that I'll keep doing.
Yes.
So imagine the whole organization as a ship, all right? And on this ship, everybody is on board and we are all expected to row together and reach a final destination, a beautiful paradise island, right? Now, without mentorship and coaching, it's like you've got a whole bunch of rowers who all think that I'm the captain, right? So on one side, you've got Bob who's trying to steer to the Bermuda Triangle because in his mind, Bob thinks that that's the paradise spot. Then we've got Susan who's trying to row in circles because she forgot the memo that was sent out which had the direction maps, right? And we've got Dave who's just trying to use his oar to fly off imaginary sharks. Everybody's running in different directions. Now, without guidance, we all know everybody's efforts are going to be scattered, right? Everybody is going to be inefficient. So it will all end up being chaotic, and you'll probably never reach the destination that you had chalked out as an organization, right? So your final destination may be earmarked, but when there is lack of direction and structure, it's just going to be everybody's trying to do something, but without concerted effort and all having a lack of alignment, we'll not reach where we wanted to. And then it's going to be a different roller coaster piece that we're going to be addressing. So if we have a coach and if we have a mentor, it's going to be that this whole culture helps to keep the alignment at different levels in the organization. It's experiencing, it's like allocating an experienced sailor to each rower. They are all going to be coached for different capabilities, which means Bob needs to be told what is the importance of sticking to the course. They all need to reach the final destination. Susan gets a coach who is going to teach her how to use the compass better and navigate better as a result. And Dave, of course, he's going to be told to, control or curb his enthusiasm and actually do the task, which is rowing and heading into the same direction as the other. So bringing alignment is going to be important. And I guess that's where the culture of coaching and mentoring helps keep driving this alignment. Be it skills training, be it upskilling, be it bridging any kind of gaps for performance. All of this is going to be helpful when our coaches and the coaches know what is the importance of this culture. It's another thing that I could say is you go back to your mom and try and learn the family recipe and try to perfect it, right? So exactly what the coach is going to say. This is something you want to ace, and this is my experience, and I bring to you my expertise. So there is a clear alignment and clear outcomes, and we're able to effect performance at a different level, and as an organization also steer in a common direction.
Wow, I think the ship analogy was one of the best analogies that I have heard, and it perfectly summarizes the question that I had on why it is important to create a culture, because it's clearly identifying those skills, and it is the job of the coach or the L&D team to know who is strong with what skill and align those skills with the task that needs to be completed.
Correct. So in the same light, you have subject matter experts in the organization who would have domain knowledge and expertise, and there will be people who will want to learn cross-functionally and gain experience, hands-on experience when they have job rotation. So these are things which are going to be coming very handy. Unilever does that. Even at Ashana, we've got a culture for continuous learning, and we also have different kind of programs. We've got an AVP program in which we try and get people to be participating and learning cross-functionally. They have the comfort of moving out of their current department and going and learning cross-functionally, acquiring skills, and then over a period of time through different job rotations, through deputation projects, they will be able to scale up and learn skills which are not just of their domain but other domains, and be better general management candidates for the organization. So these are some of the things which large structured organizations are doing, and I'm happy that we are also heading in the same direction, adapting from what some of the other leaders have established as best practices and adapting to the organization.
Right. So this actually reminds me of a wonderful point that came across in one of my previous dialogue episodes, where someone mentioned that a mentor can never be from the same team. So my manager can never be my mentor, because then that will have direct vested interest in between the manager and the person who's being coached. So what do you feel about cross-functional mentorship programs like you mentioned? Do you feel that these are way more effective than, let's say, my team lead or my team manager coaching me?
See, my manager coaching me will definitely have a vested interest for the fact that they will be too vested with my ideas. I have a working relationship. I have an existing relationship, which may end up influencing and not me performing to the next level. I may not be pushed out of my comfort zone. I may be just thought as this is my optimal performance. But somebody who is cross-functional, does not know me, does not have any baggage to my previous prior experience, just the fact that I'm supposed to mentor, it'll be a clean slate design. The person will want to experiment, the person may want to nudge me out of my comfort zone and bring the best out of me. So I think as an approach, it should not be set out as a thumb rule. It could work in some cases that the individual knows me well enough and I'm being coached for the next level in the same vertical itself. So as a result, if I'm moving vertically in the same domain as my boss is, it might help. But cross-functionally, yes, is going to be a value add. I definitely have that as wouldn't want to generalize as a rule of thumb. Cross-functional is definitely better.
Makes sense. Now, coming to technology and all the hype that is around technology, how do you feel digital platforms and tools enhance mentorship and coaching experiences, and then how do they make them more accessible for effectiveness for employees?
So first and foremost, one thing is very clear, and that's something that we've learned during the COVID era. And everybody's had that experience, first-hand experience for that matter. We learned how to work with technology and 100% remote working, which was limited to a few industries. But then we adapted to the different and changing times. So essentially, that brings me to the thought process that digital platforms definitely help break down geographical barriers. That's a given. So a mentor could be in a different city, the mentee could be in a different city. You could use Microsoft Teams, you could use Zoom or any other platform in order to have that interaction, that FaceTime, which would be important. Otherwise, having a face to the name is going to be important. So that's the first piece. It also allows for connectivity, a seamless connectivity, which is possible in today's date, even in the most remotest of areas in the world, thanks to the Internet of Things. Everybody is connected. So these platforms help in real-time collaboration. They also help in knowledge sharing. Sessions can be scheduled. There's going to be structure. There are multiple tools that are available, all the way from Slack to Trello, performance management, tracking, multiple things that can be done. We can even look at technology helping us all the way from getting our NPS surveys through SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, which has been an erstwhile piece now. Whenever we want to capture information, it's a Google form that we started with, and we've got multiple options in today's date to collaborate, to calibrate work. If I've been working on a Google sheet, I can pick up who worked on it, when was the last edit done. So technology helps us work in a lot more transparent manner too. But at the same time, I feel one thing that we need to be cognizant of is we can't replicate it across industry. For example, if I were to use any of these bots or AI bots to capture feedback, there are still some stratas of our employee bases who do not use smartphones. They're still using feature phone. So as an organization, when I need to choose technology, I'll need to be cognizant of making sure that I have technology which is available across the different layers in the organization. Not say that this particular class is going to be able to use this because they're going to be able to access it through a smartphone. I would not want to, keep others devoid of technology or not leverage technology because they don't have the capability to access it. So that's one thing that I would like to keep in mind. However, I think technology also allows for asynchronous connect and learning. So that's one thing which I would like to foster and give advice for. we can do a lot through technology, but it's just that we need to be thoughtful of how these advancements are going to help us, what is going to make sense for my organization. If another organization is doing it, it's not essential that I need to replicate it. So there are budgets, there are end user cases that I need to consider while adapting and deploying technology. It's definitely a help. These advancements have helped us, make data a lot more accessible. Conversations are not dependent on time zones, so a lot more efficiency and productivity can be achieved through this. That's where I would keep it.
Understood. So that's important, and it also depends on the industry that you're targeting, maybe even the levels of people who need to be coached. So maybe the white collar and the C-suite executives or the managers can still have access to technology, and programs can be tailored for them. However, that sensitivity needs to be kept for people who do not have access to technology. So this point makes sense, definitely.
Correct. Just one last point
again,
there, Pragya. Sorry to interrupt you. Just one last point there. So, for example, if I have beautiful content available on LinkedIn and Coursera, but it could be very, very heavily accented, English, which may not be acceptable by individuals across the globe. So even if they have subtitles and everything, there could be choices of words. So there needs to be some customization which this technology will also need to undergo. There could be translations in local language content that needs to be done. So that's again technology which is customized to deliver as per the end user.
Right. That's also a very valid point, and because of that, platforms like Courseplay have actually made sure that translations are a part of the learning programs, because regional language is a very big concern for all the L&D teams. So the moment the learners have a connection with the language is when they continue going on to the platform and keep learning. Otherwise, there'll always be a disconnect of the language barrier. So
this is again acting as a deterrent.
Yeah, exactly. So this again is a very vital point. I agree with that. So what about integrating mentorship and coaching with L&D programs? So how can mentorship and coaching be seamlessly integrated with other L&D initiatives to create a comprehensive employee strategy?
So I think there are 6-7 steps to the whole process, and how I would like to break this down is that, yes, we need to have an integrated approach, but the first step being to identify what are the development needs, understand what is required for the individuals at different levels of growth and development. So maybe I could have, a young individual who's joining the organization straight from campus requiring a different, training and development curriculum, to somebody who's at an advanced stage, wants to go to the C-suite. So of course, understanding what are the needs. So training need identification is the first step. Then what we need to do is define clear objectives. What's the outcome? It's not that I need to just put a tick in the box and get somebody to train because there is a mandate. Or maybe I have a budget and I need to exhaust it, right? So I need to set out what I have to start with the end in mind, understand what is the clear outcome of a particular training for this particular individual or set of individuals. Next, after that, once I've defined what are my outcomes, I will need to have a clear structure in terms of what the program is going to be all about. Is it an on-the-job? Is it something as simple as a self-read? It could be a self-paced online tutorial or a book, or maybe I need to actually allocate a coach or a mentor to the particular project. When I come to executing this program, this structured program that I've figured out for the individual, I will also need to align formal trainings. Now, these trainings could be internal, external, subject matter trainings, whatever the case is going to be, we need to have that and set up. Now, these trainings, again, I need to have a further bifurcation. Are they online? Are they campus immersion programs? What format is this training going to be? And then I would also want to figure out if there are other individuals who need to be nominated to these programs. So in order to facilitate peer-to-peer learning. So if there are 2 individuals learning, in the same cohort, there is going to be cross-functional conversation. There is going to be cross-learning among these individuals. Everybody has different key takeaways from the same training that they may have attended. Peer-to-peer learning and key takeaways is another thing that I like to keep in mind. And finally, at the end of it all, make sure that all of the stuff that we've done so far is linked to performance. Because, at the end of the day, we need to identify what are our clear markers. How are we identifying if these individuals who've been put into different kind of coaching, learning, development programs, what is the final outcome? Are they being able to impact their performance key indicators? So somewhere linking it to performance, tracking what has the individual learned and put back. And all of this gets summed up and stitched up into what I would call a career development plan for individuals. So there's one central repository where I'm tracking. This was the 6-month plan for the individual. These are the things that have been done, clear outcomes being defined, and a routine or a schedule or a rhythm for having routine check-ins to understand what is it that they're doing in their learning and development journeys, and how is it augmenting their career development.
Understood. So I have a difficult question. I mean, it might be a difficult question. When you are gauging performance, right? Because that is the most important point of any program. How do you, what are the parameters that you set? Because it can be in terms of coaching as well, or the other programs that the learner was a part of. What are the main, let's say, 2-3 key metrics that you feel will help you understand the performance of this individual?
So at Ashana, what we follow is a simple Kirkpatrick model for training. So before an individual is sent into our training program, we understand what are the 2 competencies that we'd like to address. We should have a clarity on that. We should not be signing up for more than 2 or 3 competencies that we want to address. So that, it's a simple thing. If you try and set a lot of competencies to be addressed in one single training, you'll not get a clear outcome. So it's best to opt for at least 2 and not more than 2 competencies. Get a pre-training rating for the individual before you send them to a particular training or a coaching session. Have a conversation with the coach to tell them that these are the areas of development you'd like the person to hone on and develop and scale up in that particular subject. Get more understanding and be able to use those tricks and tools and tips to their day-to-day operation. And after 45 to 60 days of them going through the sessions, start gauging whether they're practicing what they are being taught in the sessions. That will help you get a pre and post understanding, and an effectiveness of that particular session is going to be a clear outcome for us to understand, is it making sense for the individual, or is it just a tick in the box, the person is going in, clocking in the hours. So if there is this engagement, you're able to understand it earlier on, rather than wait for a 6-month or an annual review to check in. So a healthy check-in time period is going to be 45 to 60 days after they've attended a session.
Yeah.
And in case there is a requirement for course correction, maybe they didn't like the interaction with the coach or the mentor, or the particular subject was not being delivered correctly, maybe figure out an alternate, what needs to be fixed. So course correction can be done earlier than later.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you're reviewing it after 45 to 60 days, you are actually able to understand from both the angles whether the learner is learning it and whether the coaching is happening in the correct way or not.
Correct. Plus, what we also do is, so a lot of times managers will have the tendency to say that, okay, I just have to give a rating on a scale of 10, let me do that. And HR ends up, or the L&D person in the team says, all right, just give me the rating, right? We should not be in that hurry. We should, in fact, take a little bit more time and say, can you substantiate with examples of how and where you've seen this person? For example, one of my team members went in for training on delegation. Now, I did get a good feedback that yes, work is happening and they're doing better, they're managing their team better. So I had to go back and ask and probe, the reporting manager. And I was told that please give me an example of how they delegated tasks earlier and how are they benefiting from the training? How is it that they are now delegating better? So I was able to give back real-time scenarios of how tasks are being briefed. What's the actual difference? What are the tools that they learned? A simple time management concept of urgent and important tasks are going to be delegated or not delegated. The decision making for that. Any time wasters, low value activities that were being delegated. So those kind of decisions is what I was being able to see my team member, work on as key takeaways from the delegation training. So I was able to substantiate with evidence rather than just give a rating on a scale of 10. So it's a good way to go back and ask managers that a rating won't suffice. We would like you to share real-time examples of what they're doing on the job. That also goes to help, get a better understanding of how entrenched is the reporting manager with the respective team members' development program.
Yeah, that makes sense. Gauging the before and after with substantiating examples. That's perfectly put. Thank you so much for answering all the questions and giving us your valuable input. I have learned a lot from today's session. It was really fun speaking to you. Thank you so much for taking out time for us today.
Thank you, Pragya, and thank you, Courseplay, once again, and wishing all L&D team members a journey which is onwards and upward from here. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Surabhi.
Thanks. Bye-bye.